game, relations with ourselves, the world around us, and the greater universe, finding our way back home.
And greetings. And welcome back to another session of the ABE Communications. Again, staying with the reality game. And now I'd like to begin a few minutes of sharing some ABE communications from section 4, which is contact with the greater universe. So we've talked about relations with ourselves and the world around us, and a bit about the reality game. Now, section 4 goes on about how humanity is related to the greater universe, or not, as the case may be. And I think it's true that humanity, especially now coming through a long period of materialism and industrialization and scientific materialism, and coming on the back of that, we tend to have a very isolated view of humanity in terms of the larger cosmos. And we tend to see everything not only in a reductionist manner, but also in a very kind of isolated manner, as if in a vacuum. And we just tend to, our main scientific narrative is just humanity is on this planet, and, you know, we're alone in the universe because we haven't communicated yet with any other intelligences. It may not quite be as simple as that, of course. So Abe starts off by saying, look, you know, we are a kind of out of sync species. That's why we have this main viewpoint that we are alone. We are just trying to survive on this planet in space, and we know very little about the environment, our cosmic environment. You know, we only know the slim data we can get from our telescopes, which only then pertains or aligned with a thin slither of the spectrum of our perceptive range. So, of course, what doesn't fall in our perceptive range, we think it doesn't exist. Of course, we know that's not the case, but it's limited us greatly. And so Abe begins immediately on the opening page of section 4 by saying, you but sense and feel the world around you, but you do so feel that you have taken yourself to be out of this system, out of this connection. And it's true, I think we are decoupled, desynchronized. And also because largely, especially, I suppose, scientific thinking and the thinking that's come out of the Western kind of developmental path, is that we've come to see things in terms of mechanical systems. And we see our humanity and nature as part of a kind of system or ecosystem, but we haven't yet actually translated that to a grander cosmic system of systems within systems within systems. We tend to think that our system just pertains to us here on Earth. And so therefore we are blocking ourselves by limited perception. Abe continues by saying, quote, for in the opening up of the expansiveness in which this universe is, are you not just allowing more pathways to be built? When more pathways are being created, then are you not then seeing deeper truths, deeper relations? A seemingly simple sentence, but there's always a lot kind of packed into what Abe says. So Abe immediately says the expansiveness in which this universe is, an indication of how we do not recognize or appreciate how expansive this universe that we're a part of is. We only perceive a small bit. And so Abe is saying, if we can just open up a little bit, we can create more pathways, i.e. more ways of thinking, perhaps rewiring our neural pathways, our modes of perception, if we can rewire ourselves or create new pathways, i.e., break out of or expand our perceptual patterns by creating new pathways, then more of the expansive universe will come in. And when more pathways are being created, then are you not seeing deeper truths, deeper relations? So it's like a kind of step by step kind of process. Each iteration can create a feedback for the next. So if we can change or step out of our old patterns, our limiting perceptual patterns, and then by doing that, by allowing that opportunity, we perceive more of the universe around us. It's like the crack widens. And as the crack widens, a little bit more light comes in, which then opens the crack a bit more, you see? So if more comes in, it helps to create new pathways, i.e., develop, expand our perceptual patterns. And then that allows more light to come in, which then affects us to create more patterns, which allows more light to come in. What it means is that the more we open up, that helps us to allow our perceptual patterns to open up more, to allow in more perception. More perception that comes in helps us to, again, expand our perception. So we keep expanding our range by step, but we have to make the first steps. Abe says, if you are not internally creating these pathways, then you are not so either externally. You are at where you are at. So if we don't make an effort to internally create these new pathways, i.e., new patterns of thinking, new patterns of being and sensing, then we don't make it externally. We don't change the world or our reality around us. So we are at where we are at. Our internal state reflects or dictates how we perceive reality. And if reality doesn't open up for us, then it's not going to impact our own internal state. It's this kind of mutual relationship. We have to make an effort to change our perceptive patterns to reality can start to expand, which affects us. If we don't do that, we are at where we are at, says Abe. And Abe is trying to impress upon us all the time that we are part of a huge web of communication, a huge ongoing kind of collectivity of consciousness, which is communicating all the time, but we just can't perceive it. We think we're in a kind of isolation chamber, like in a Faraday cage. And, now scientists are saying, well, we've not heard any messages from other intelligences, so, we must be alone. Well, maybe they are communicating with us constantly. We're just not able to pick up the signal. And Abe refers to that. Abe says, quote, but what we see is a highway of communication. No one direction, no one way, but intrinsically intertwined, interrelated, and interpreted wrong. So there's a highway of communication, not one way, but mutual, going on all the time. It's interrelated, but we interpret it wrong, i.e., we don't perceive it, we're not open to it. And so it's going on all around us, but we don't sense it. And hence, we just kind of strengthen or validate our own sense of being isolated. And we have to get out of this self-referential loop. We think we're isolated, though we don't make any efforts to expand our range, our scope. And so we maintain and sustain our kind of isolated bubble. Abe continues this theme by saying, this kind of web of consciousness has a rhythm. It's like music. It's just ongoing, the music of the spheres, we could say. Abe says, quote, for you to resonate these, to tune back up, for when the instrument is finely tuned, it can then create a pattern, a rhythm, a beat. This web of consciousness is the beats and can correlate to this greater symphony of being. So we have a kind of musical analogy there, whereby the human body or the human being is an instrument that's out of tune. And so when we're out of tune, we cannot relate to the playing of the orchestra. And he's saying that the web of consciousness is beats, and it's the greatest symphony of being. So this universe is full of kind of different intelligences or different beings being part of this web of consciousness, this orchestra. But we can't get in sync with the orchestra because we haven't retuned our instrument. We're out of sync. And because we're out of sync, then psychologically, on a psychic level, we are fragmented. Also, perhaps on an emotional level. It refers to the kind of splintering of consciousness by saying, quote, we see it as the ashes of the body left in differing places. And this is what we see on a conscious level, scattered, splintered, call it what you will. So the idea here is that we're not operating through a kind of unified consciousness in ourselves. It's like having scattered ashes. There's bits here, bits there. And that's what they see or perceive on a conscious level. So the consciousness we operate through is fragmented and scattered. And that's part of our kind of desyncing. Got to fly. So they're saying that because of this desyncing, we're in a cacophony. We're not part of a melodic universe. The universe is melodic, but we're in a kind of cacophonic. So a cacophonous. I wrote this, so I should be able to pronounce it. A cacophony. A cacophony. Can you see the fly? Fly wants a part of the action. So to finish off with, Abe gives a slightly larger analogy, a longer one, talking about how humanity has taken itself out of a natural environment. And because of that, we've become decoupled from what should be our natural melodic environment. So they have a kind of what I call a fertile analogy because it's a plant nature analogy. So I'll read it in full. They say, a nice flowering plant in which you have never seen starts to naturally grow in your backyard. You see its beauty, and maybe you pick a few of the flowers because they smell so sweet. And you pop them into a vase in your kitchen. And every time you come in, you smell the scent and see the beauty and look out of your window and see them in abundance, naturally flourishing. A friend comes around and sees the flowers, loves the smell, sees the beauty, and sees also they are abundant in your backyard. She asked to see if she could take a clipping and plant in her own backyard, and soon has this plant abundant in her backyard. A friend, a scientist, says, wow, I would like to study this plant, and comes back to the two ladies and says that the plant has so many beneficial components to not allow any more clippings, for they should be contained and harvested and therefore taken out of their natural environment where they flourish and monetize, sell back that in which is but of the nature of things. Interesting there because there's key words. Abe says that the plant in the backyard is flourishing. When life is in his natural environment, it flourishes. And they say that it smells so sweet and lovely and beautiful and it's abundant. That's life. Life is beauty and joy, and like it's full of perfume, it flourishes, and it wants to spread. That's why when the neighbor comes, she'd love to have some clippings, and she takes some into her backyard. She appreciates this life, this natural life. And once she plants, it starts to flourish also. Any life in its natural environment starts to flourish. And it's only when the scientist comes and says, here's something interesting. This plant seems to have interesting properties. Don't share it anymore. I want to contain it. contain it, harvest it, take it out of its natural environment, and monetize it. It's interesting that monetize bit, because Abe has said previously that humanity kind of splinters itself and sells its parts back to itself. So here Abe is saying the scientist, or the kind of rational materialistic view, wants to take something, study it, contain it, harvest it, monetize it, get utility value from it. But by doing so, it takes out of its natural environment. So it cannot flourish, it cannot be beautiful, or cannot attain to its full beautiful potential. So the analogy there is that humanity has taken itself out of its natural environment, desynced and come out of resonance with the larger universal cosmic web of consciousness. And so we need to break that containment and get back into our natural environment. And I think that's very, very kind of significant, talking about our relations with the greater universe. It seemed as if we've taken ourselves out and we need to put ourselves back into sync. So thank you, Abe, for those nudges and for those rememberings to get back into alignment. So I think the fly is buzzed off now. So thanks for joining me and sharing these communications of Abe. As always, I wish you well. Stay sane, stay healthy, and above all, stay grounded. Cheers.